Rodney Clough was born and raised in the American Mormon colony of Colonia Juarez in the northern part of Chihuahua, Mexico. His ancestors were some of the first colonizers of America. He traces his ancestry back to the Anglo-Saxon Vikings to the tribe of Ephraim of the House of Israel. Rodney became interested in the hollow earth theory while working on a New Mexico farm at the age of 16, where the farm manager's son told the workers about the theory. Years later, Rodney saw an advertisement for Dr. Raymond Bernard's book, The Hollow Earth, and thereby started many years of study and research that has culminated in his e-book, World Top Secret, Our Earth is Hollow, which is available on his website, which I'll tell you about in a sec. Currently, Mr. Clough works as a computer programmer analyst and continues his research into evidences for hollow planets as a hobby. Our special guest tonight on Coast to Coast. Rodney, how are you?
Very fine.
My pleasure. Boy, I've been wanting to do this topic for years, and I'm glad you're with us tonight, and appreciate the fact, even during a holiday season, you'd spend some time with us.
Well, very glad to be with you.
The story that you were told when you were working on the farm, can you relate that to us?
Yes, when I was 16, with some colony boys, we got a job out on a New Mexico farm that was managed by my uncle's brother. And the guy that I was working with was an older fellow, also from the colonies. And one evening he told me that the farm manager's son had told him about this book that he had read, The Hollow Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And he commented to the boys that he thought it was an ideal place for the Lord to hide the lost 10 tribes. And that piqued my interest, and it just stayed in the back of my mind. And years later, when I saw this advertisement for the book, I sent for it. It was about 1974, around about there. And I started in earnest researching this subject ever since then. And I have come up with a substantial amount of scientific, scriptural, and historical evidence that supports the hollow earth theory.
And you've supplied a graphic to our webmaster, Lex, which, if everyone listening has the ability to get to their computer, we're going to be making some reference to it throughout the night. So you might want to be able to get on the coasttocoastam.com website and look at it. And by the way, Rodney's website is called OurHollowEarth.com, and there's a link with his name right on the coasttocoastam.com website. It'll take you straight to his website. There have been many theories about the hollow earth theory, Rodney. We'll talk about all of them tonight, whether who's living there, if anyone's living there. Perhaps they might be extraterrestrials, but primarily, here's a question for you. If the earth is hollow, don't you think we would have been told by it, it would have been spotted by satellites, or has it been, and they're just not telling us? And if they're not, why?
1981, I took my family and we flew to Fairbanks, Alaska. My object of going up there was to research the hollow earth to see if I could find any evidence. And I met an interesting person up there in Fairbanks. His name was John Gagne.
Mm-hmm.
At one time, he was a radio announcer down in Juneau, the capital of Alaska. And one weekend, he was out with his buddies outside the city, and they happened to notice a light up above a mountain there by them. And presently, it turned red and zipped off into space. And then back on his radio station, he brought up the subject and asked if anybody had seen the UFO over the weekend that him and his buddies saw. He says that shortly after that, a woman came in to talk to him. Her name was Sylvia Darvell. He said that Sylvia Darvell had been involved in Alaskan politics from way back and had been a very close friend of Admiral Byrd. And she told my friend John Gagne that Admiral Byrd, after his Arctic flight of 1947, had come to her and confided in her what he had found up there. She said that Admiral Byrd flew past the ice, came to a continent covered with lush vegetation, saw a mammoth wandering along on the terrain below. She said that he says that they were presently sighted by flying saucer type craft that took control of his airplane and landed him near an inner Earth city. He was taken in and interviewed by a government official of their country, and their concern was that we had just used nuclear weapons to blow up a couple of cities out here at the end of World War II, just the year before. And the message that they wanted him to bring back to our government was that they opposed our use of nuclear weapons. He was treated very politely. He said that they were very friendly people. He said that they were large in stature, they were very highly advanced in the sciences, and that they had monorail trains between their cities, and flying craft that we have since come to call flying saucers. He was taken back to his airplane, put back in the air, and when he arrives back out on outer Earth, he reported to Washington, and he was told to not to keep this secret, not to tell anybody about it. But this story that Sylvia Darvell told my friend John Gagne has confirmed the rumors that we've heard down through the years that Admiral Byrd actually found something up there.
And reportedly he put some of this in a diary, didn't he, Rodney?
He did. He actually wrote a book, and he had it in bookstores, and the government agents confiscated them all. His family still has his writings, but they're kept under lock and key. John Gagne told me that he met a friend of the Byrd family when he was attending Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, and that over the Christmas break he asked her if she could ask the Byrd family if he could look at some of the writings. And she came back from Christmas break and says, no, they don't let anybody read his writings, that they have it on their lock and key. Probably because they don't want to lose it.
Or how would you like to get your hands on that, just to take a look at that? Wouldn't that be fascinating?
Very fascinating. It's interesting that the family of Admiral Byrd to this day believe that he discovered that our Earth is hollow.
And was he going into the North Pole for that, right?
That flight was February of 1947.
North Pole, though, not South Pole.
North Pole.
Yeah. Now, I assume Sylvia Darvell up there in Alaska is no longer alive. Is that correct?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Because that would put her way up there in years. Let's talk about the possibilities. So I assume, though, what you're saying to me is if satellites are taking pictures of a hollow Earth, they're not showing them to us. Is that correct?
That's correct. I was on the email list with Jan Lomprich of South Africa a few years ago, and one of the list members came on one day and he says that his son at his high school had invited a NASA scientist to come talk to them, and after the discussion he followed him down the hall, and he stopped him and he said, point blank, he asked him, do you guys have satellite images of the South Pole opening? And the scientist looked at him for a little bit, and then he just said, yes, but we paintbrush them out to look like ice and snow. So there was a confession by this scientist.
Now, is this hollow Earth theory, is this supposed to be a hole that goes straight from the North Pole right through the planet to the South Pole? Or is there some break in here? Because, I mean, something's got to be there's got to be, for something to be that long. I mean, it's got to be, it's huge. So I can't picture that.
The Earth is similar to a bubble or a ball. It has a shell. My estimate of the thickness of the shell is about 800 miles from the outside to the inner surface, up near the pole, thinner towards the equator, because indications are the acceleration of gravity increases towards the pole, requiring more matter. And that inside the Earth, suspended in the hollow, is a central sun that emits a solar wind out through the polar openings, causing the auroras to light up above the poles. And that at near about 5 degrees from the poles are situated polar openings that curve gradually into the interior of the Earth. Estimate.
Go ahead, Rodney.
My estimate of the polar openings is that they are about 890 miles from crest to crest, and it gradually curves into the inner Earth. From outside the inner surface would be about 2,500 miles, and as it gradually curves in, where it gets down close to to the neck of it, it's only about 90 miles in diameter.
So with that curvature, though, it's very possible that you could fly into it or even walk into it, and you wouldn't even know, because it would be ever so slightly, right?
Very, very slightly. The curvature can be detected, and on our voyage to the Hollow Earth expedition, we're going to take gyroscopes that will be able to detect the curvature into the polar opening and help us locate that 90-mile aperture.
As you go into the Hollow Earth, as Admiral Byrd described, you start seeing vegetation, prehistoric-looking animals, and then you've got this colony of extraterrestrials. What are the possibilities, Rodney, that also within this Hollow Earth might be human beings who have somehow decided to live there? Is that possible?
I'm certain that the people that live in the Hollow Earth are not extraterrestrials. They're most of them are from the lost tribes of Israel that migrated into the North countries over 2,500 years ago, and have just progressed faster than we have because they don't have wars and sickness like we have.
Well, now, what's your theory or evidence behind this one?
In 1829, a couple of Norwegian people, Olaf Jansen and his father Jens, were fishing up north of Franz Josef Land when they noticed a lead through the ice, and they followed this lead northeast of Franz Josef Land and accidentally found their way through the North Polar opening to the inner Earth. They reached the inner Earth and sailed along the coast and went up this big river, which they later found out was called by the inhabitants of the inner Earth the River Hiddekel, which is one of the rivers that flows out of the Garden of Eden. They were met by a ship of inner Earth that was coming down the river, and were taken in by them, and they lived among them for 2 years. And they learned their language, which he described as similar to Sanskrit, and they related to him that their god that was Jehovah. Jehovah is the god of the ancient Israelites. Now, it's interesting that Olaf Jansen and his father were not Christians.
Right.
They believed in the Norwegian gods of Odin and Thor, which is their ancestors. And their ancestors, they have a legend that their ancestors, their cousins of their ancestors, migrated into the North country, and Olaf Jansen's father called them the chosen people. And they believed that those people were related to them.
All right, so you believe that we're not dealing with extraterrestrials here, as some people have theorized, but human earthbound inhabitants who have had such a tremendous technological capabilities, but that they are the descendants of the lost tribes of Israel.
You know, only 300 years ago was the time when Galileo lived. When he looked through his telescope and looked at Jupiter and saw moons going around Jupiter, and then claimed to the Catholic Church that we weren't the center of the universe, that we were probably orbiting the sun. Well, that was only 300 years ago. These people inside the Hollow Earth have been living there for 2,500 years. With the scientific advancement that they have, they're a couple of thousand years in advance than us. I believe that they have this technology, that they have these flying saucer technology, and that a lot of the little green men that they see are actually robots.
All right, so when we see humanoids or something like that reported, you're saying that these are robots sent from those in the Hollow Earth?
Yes, Dr. Greer is a medical doctor that has researched flying saucers and has about 400 or 500 expert witnesses. One of them said that they have dissected these UFO knots, that they have been able to down some of the flying saucers and dissect some of these UFO knots, and he describes that they have two brains. One is computer chips, and the other one is a human-type brain. He says it doesn't have any sexual organs, no digestive organs, no vocal cords. They communicate with telepathy. My conclusion is that the inner Earth people have built these androids that fly their flying saucers out to reconnoiter the outer Earth.
The hole itself would be how big? Let's say, looking at it from the top of the planet, looking down, how big would that hole be in terms of miles across?
Okay, where it starts to dip into the polar opening is about 445 miles, I estimate, from the center of the opening. It gradually curves into the Earth so that at the neck of the opening, it's only about 90 miles. Now, there was a fellow that sent an email asking about the airline flights over the pole and why they haven't seen these polar openings. Well, the polar opening is quite small. They could easily miss it in all their flights up there.
All right, stay with us, Rodney. We're going to take this quick break. Welcome back to Coast to Coast. I'm George Noory, Rodney Clough, our guest. Rodney, let's get right back into this Hollow Earth theory. We were talking about the distance. So you say it's about 445 miles across before it really starts to go in. The curvature goes in. Now, when you talk about Hollow Earth, again, are we talking about something that goes all the way down from the North Pole to the South Pole, or do you think it hollows, it stops, and then maybe there's another hole at the South Pole that does the same thing? Or does it go all the way through the planet?
This goes all the way through the planet, but you need to understand that the Earth is mostly hollow. Like an atom is hollow. It has an electron shell and a nucleus suspended in that hollow. The Earth also has a shell. It's only about 800 miles from the outside to the inside, and there's 6,400 miles inside the Earth that is hollow. There's space.
All right, if you were to be in the middle there, aside from the fact that you say there's a sun there, looking up, what do you think you'd see? What would you see? Rocks? What would it look like?
If you were standing on the inner surface?
Yeah, and just looking, I guess, toward the sides of the inside of the planet, what would you be seeing?
Well, out on the outer surface, our Earth curves away so that you can't see past about 60 miles before the horizon dips below the horizon. Inside would be just the opposite, where the horizon gradually curves up, and Olaf Janssen described the sky as a purplishly color because of the other side of the hollow was also covered with vegetation, and of course directly above your head is the inner sun.
Would there be clouds up there, in there?
Oh, the atmosphere inside is is just like on the outside of the surface of the Earth. Most of the atmosphere is within the first 45 miles, but extends up about 600 miles as it rarefies towards space. The same on the inside of the Earth. The air would only go up about 45 miles and on up to about 600 miles in a rarefied density.
No, we had on this planet yesterday an 8.1 to 8.2 magnitude near Antarctica that affected even up to Tasmania, up near Australia, New Zealand. It must have been 6-7 miles deep in the ocean. How would that affect any inhabitants in a hollow Earth? I mean, do they feel our surface earthquakes or anything like that?
Yes, the large earthquakes cause the Earth to vibrate like a bell, and a bell is hollow. So that right there is evidence that our Earth is hollow. Whenever there's a large earthquake, causes the Earth to ring like a bell with a period of about 54 minutes. You can find that right in your encyclopedia. And receive a lot of rebounds from the inner surface. And then on the other side of the planet, there is a shadow zone where very little of these earthquakes reach. This shadow zone is caused because of the hollow. The earthquakes don't pass through the hollow.
Now, there are some people who believe the planet's only 6,000 years old. Others, as I do, believe that, of course, it's 4.5 billion years old. What's your thought on that?
I believe that this Earth was born of other planets. The ancient astronomers, Chaldean astronomers, are reported, as recorded in one of Manuel Velikovsky's books, I think it was World in Collision, that the planet Venus was ejected out of the head of Jupiter, and for many years was a comet. It went around the sun and came close to the Earth and caused a lot of the plagues of the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt. And
and that's Velikovsky's theory, so you do believe that about Venus?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's also in our church there's some of the early leaders indicated that planets are born from other planets. So if the planets are hollow, it's conceivable that they could be created inside of a larger planet and then ejected out through a polar opening.
I'm not Mormon. I was raised Catholic. I don't know. Do you still practice the Mormon faith? Because my question is do all Mormons believe in a hollow Earth theory, or is this just coming from you, and you just happen to be a Mormon?
R. Clayton Burrell, in his book The Lost Tribes, did a survey of the Latter-day Saints and found that about 4% of them thought that the hollow Earth theory might be a good explanation of where the lost 10 tribes are. So I don't think that there's any more Latter-day Saints or Mormons that believe in the hollow Earth than just the regular people out in the world.
Okay, so it's not a practicing part of the faith that
no.
The Earth is hollow. Okay, I understand. Tell me a little bit more about why you believe the Earth is hollow. I mean, what kind of scientific evidence is really out there? Well,
like I explained, I studied earthquakes and how the scientists say that whenever there's a large earthquake, it causes the earth to ring like a bell, and a bell is hollow. And then on the other side of the earth from the epicenter, there's this shadow zone where the earthquakes don't arrive. Now, there's two kinds of earthquakes. There's the S waves that shake like a rope when you shake it, and then there's the P waves that are like or compression waves, like sound waves are. And so but both kinds of waves have a shadow zone on the opposite side of the Earth from the epicenter. The S waves, scientists claim that they don't go through the center of the Earth because it's molten, but they also wouldn't go through if it was hollow. So it's consistent with the hollow Earth theory. Is consistent with the observation of earthquakes.
All right. Now you say there's a sun in the middle of the planet, so
right.
it can't be that big.
Our estimation is that it's about 600 miles in diameter, which actually would make it look a lot bigger than our sun. In fact, 23 times bigger than our sun. One calculation of a friend I have said if you took a circle out of a piece of paper 25 inches in diameter and held at arm's length, that would be the size of the parent size of the inner sun from you.
All right, I'm going to try to pitch this down. Now, the sun's in the middle of the planet. It's about 600 miles in diameter, which means then that the people on the surface of the hollow portion of the planet are about 3,000 some miles from the sun, right?
Right.
Wouldn't they burn up? I mean, if we were 3,000 miles from our sun, it's history time for us.
Yeah, but the inner sun is built so that it produces just the right amount of heat to produce ideal climate and temperatures on the inside surface of the planet. It's a paradise there. Olaf Janssen reported that everything grows bigger there. Trees grow to 1,000 feet tall. Even the people are from 7 feet to 15 feet tall.
Oh my, which, well, the Bible used to describe giants. So maybe they're descendants from them.
Well, actually, I have evidence that Adam and Eve were at least 10 feet tall people. There was a apostle of our church that was out riding on his mule in the early days of the church, about over 150 years ago. And he was riding along, and he noticed walking beside him was this hairy being that he turned and looked, and it was looked like a Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
And shocked, he didn't know what to think, but then that being started talking to him. He says his name was Cain, that the Lord had condemned him to be a wanderer in the earth, and that he couldn't die. He had tried many times to kill himself, but couldn't. And he was as tall as this apostle was on his mule. So he's at least 10 feet tall. And he was the son of Adam. So indications are that the our original ancestors were large in stature.
Almost like the dinosaurs in a very pure state when this planet didn't have the kind of pollution and atmospheric problems that it has now.
Right, right.
Describe for me, Rodney, if you can, to the best of your ability, what the inside then looks like. Don't mention the sun, you've already talked about that, but what does the surface of the inside look like? What kind of vegetation is there? What kind of animals are there? What kind of cities are there? What do they look like?
Olaf Janssen reported that there is one continent inside the Earth and one ocean. The ocean is small compared to the continent. I estimate the continent to be about 16,000 miles from one side to the other, and the inner ocean only about 3,000. So most of the inner surface is inhabitable. Compared to the outer surface of the Earth, we have 3/4 water instead of 3/4 land. So there's possibly more land inside the planet than there is on the outside. And there's lush vegetation there. The vegetation grows like a paradise. Olaf Jensen remarked that some of the apples that grow on the trees in the earth are as large as your head, and peaches are just humongous. Pears, the grapes were as the size of our oranges, and the people there live to be up to 800 years old with no sickness or disease. It's just a veritable paradise. After spending a year learning their language, he and his father were taken overland in the monorail train to their capital city, which is built around the original lost Garden of Eden. And he described it on the highest mountain plateau of the inner continent, that where the vegetation grew even more profusely. And he described the artesian fountain in the Garden of Eden and how it divides and flows into 4 rivers that go to the 4 corners of the earth. 2 goes to the North and South Pole, and the other goes the other 2 directions.
Are there other openings to get into the hollow earth? Are there special caves, perhaps, throughout the planet, or just at the North and South Pole?
There are tunnels throughout the earth have been discovered, probably built by the antediluvian people that were quite advanced in the sciences and technology. There are caverns that go all the way through the earth. For example, the book Etidorpa, Hollow Earth researcher Bruce Walton from Provo, Utah, figured out that the I Am the Man guy in the book Etidorpa was actually a man named William Morgan, who had joined the Freemasonry Society back in 1827, around there.
Freemasons come up again, huh?
And that they threw him in jail on trumped-up charges of debt, and then stole him out of the jail, threw a body into a lake, and claimed it was him. But they had actually just kidnapped him and took him on a journey to the hollow earth through a communicating cavern. He described this entrance to this cavern in Kentucky, which I believe is probably the Mammoth Cave, which I understand they haven't found the end of it. And his book is, he came back several years later with this manuscript, and it was published. It's called Etidorpa. It's quite interesting. He describes the earth as being hollow with a shell of 800 miles thick, and the conditions within the crust of the earth on his journey to the inner earth.
There are a lot of people, Rodney, who believe this theory, aren't there?
There are in the thousands, I would say, all over the earth, yeah, but probably no more than about 4% of the people.
I want to talk a little bit about an expedition that is heading that way to look for the hole in the planet. We'll talk about that next hour. When I was a kid, I remember reading about what was called Shambhala, an area that people believed was a tunnel into the center of the planet. I remember reading Jules Verne's book, Journey to the Center of the Earth. Were those all talking about what you're talking about tonight, and that is a hollow earth?
Yeah, Jules Verne's book is actually based on the exact same ideas that was reported by Olaf Jensen. His fictional book, Journey to the Center of the Earth, was about some explorers that descended into an extinct volcano in Iceland, and they went down into the inner world, and they came out into an inner surface where there was an ocean, a continent, and an inner sun giving off light and plentiful plant and animal life, and they even caught sight of some giant people tending a herd of mammoths. So these are all exactly the same things that Olaf Jensen reported he actually saw. So he must have had some pretty good information.
You were talking at the top of the break, right before it, about planes that would fly over the poles. Why can't they see the hole?
Actually, they do. I have a friend that was flying in an he flies a lot, and one time he was sitting by this airliner pilot that was just sitting right by him as a passenger.
All right.
And he asked him if he had ever seen the polar opening at the North Pole, and and this airline pilot told him he had. So they just keep it between themselves, not to raise a suspicion, I guess, but people have seen the polar openings.
We get a lot of reports of people disappearing, Rodney. Is it possible that they're being taken and yanked into the hollow earth?
I don't think so. There's indications that our government has been knocking flying saucers out of the sky and back engineering these flying saucers, and have been building them underground, and they have been abducting people to try to do engineering on them. Trying, I suppose, to try to duplicate these androids that they see flying out in these flying saucers.
Well, when we come back, I want to talk about the expedition planned in the summer of, I think it's 2006, as a matter of fact, to look for the hollow earth. And also, let's talk a little bit more about the inhabitants of the hollow earth, Rodney, when we come right back. I'm George Noory. Back in a moment as Coast to Coast continues. A little bit later on, I'll open up the phone lines. I'll give you an opportunity to chat with Rodney Clough about the hollow earth theory. I kind of like that opening. Maybe I am in the hollow earth, and I've been keeping it as a surprise. But I'll be back in a moment. Rodney Clough, our guest. We're talking about the hollow earth. As a matter of fact, he's got a book called The World Top Secret, Our Earth is Hollow. It is an ebook available on his website. Couple websites, by the way. They're linked up with coasttocoastam.com. OurHollowEarth.com, okay? And then the other is called VoyageHollowEarth.com. We'll explain that one in a moment because there's going to be an expedition as well. But I've got a few more questions. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Noory with our guest tonight, Rodney Clough. Rodney, some people have been sending me messages, and they think, what happens if you fall in the hole? It is the incline into the curvature is so slight. It's not like you fall in. You just walk in, or you fly in, or you come in. But, I mean, you don't fall into a hole, right?
Well, this is a misconception that scientists have propagated, that the center of gravity of the Earth is in the center of the Earth. Well, there is a small center of gravity in the inner sun, but since most of the Earth's matter is in the Earth's shell, then that is where the acceleration of gravity accelerates towards, is in the shell of the planet. And as you're going around the polar lip, you're accelerated to where the mass of the planet is, and that's below your feet. So you're not going to fall through the hole, because the center of gravity is not, for us on the surface, is not the center of the planet. This is the matter that's under our feet.
What is keeping the central sun, the sun in the hollow earth, from hitting the sides or something? What's keeping it in its floating orbit? Or I guess its floating position?
It's suspended in the center of the Earth by gravity, and also by a ion emission that repels. It repels from all directions, so it keeps it centrally located in the center of the planet.
All right, so there's no danger of the thing smashing into the inside of the planet, right?
No. Absolutely not.
All right, we're gonna go to our website and look at the hollow Earth graphic that you gave us. And do you have it available to you right now? And you could just take us through this
Sure.
and kind of show us the openings are are about 84.4 degrees. They're not 90 degrees. They're not straight up, but it's tilted just a little bit, right? Is there a reason for that?
Yes, the polar openings were probably formed with the Earth in rotation, with centrifugal force throwing matter out from the center, and at the poles creating these polar openings centered over the axis of the Earth in the original creation period. But evidently the Earth has been bypassed by planet-sized comets in past geological history and has tipped the Earth on its axis. Indication of this is the Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. When they discovered the entrance into the pyramid, they realized it was pointing to the North Star. But curiously, the North Star that it was pointing at is 5 degrees off from our polar star. So I think that the evidence shows that this pyramid was built before the flood by the highly advanced civilization that lived before the flood of Noah, and that it originally pointed to the North Star at that time. But
are there any inhabitants living on the curvature before you get into the hollow inner space?
The North Polar opening is located in the Arctic Ocean, so that there is no land until you get halfway through the opening. Then you reach the inner continent. Now, this inner continent has been sighted as a mirage all around the Arctic. The Russians have sighted it north of the New Siberian Islands. They call it Sannikov Land. There was an explorer, Fridtjof Nansen, took his ship, the Fram, up there trying to find Sannikov Land. He came very close to it, and he found noticed a lot of anomalous happenings up there, phenomenon. For example, he noticed that at the 70 degrees north latitude, 135 east longitude, in the middle of the winter, January, he noticed that a north wind raised the temperature, while a south wind lowered it. So warm air coming up out of the polar opening causes mirages of allowing people around the Arctic to see this land inside the Earth. Now, a person down here in the lower latitudes, if you see a mirage, you usually see the sky because you're looking down a highway and the hot layer of air just above the highway reflects the sky.
Yeah, that's true.
But up in the Arctic, it's exactly the opposite, because warm air coming up out of the polar opening goes up way up above you. In fact, it's called the temperature inversion. They call it temperature inversion because it's warmer higher up than down next to the ice.
Now, if the North Polar opening, though, is indeed there, and you say it's in the ocean, what's keeping the water from not going down there like a drain? Just flooding the inside.
Gravity. Gravity is gravity, as any student of physics knows, is caused by a concentration of mass. Wherever you have the largest concentration of mass, that's where gravity flows. And all the Earth's mass, except a very small portion of it, is in the Earth's shell, not in the center of the Earth. So as you're going around the curvature of the opening, your feet are held to the surface of the planet, just like it is on the outside of the surface of the planet.
Can you assume, Rodney, that if the Earth formed this way, other planets form the same way?
Absolutely. On my website, I have a picture of the Hubble Space Telescope image of the North Polar opening of Mars. Usually, the North Polar opening of Mars is covered by so much cloud cover that they claim it's ice, but it's really not. They're actually clouds. And these clouds, they go way up in the atmosphere, up to 50 miles up in the atmosphere, so high that you can even see it by telescope from Earth, that it stands above the curvature of the planet. But on this one certain day, there was hardly any cloud cover. And you can see down inside the polar opening, it looks like a giant crater. And I encourage you all to go to my website and look at that picture of the North Polar opening of Mars. Now, astronomers have reported throughout history, and you can find records of this, that they have seen gleams of the inner sun shining out through certain times of the year, and certain passages of Mars around the sun, of the inner sun of Mars shining out through its polar opening. They have also seen that gleams of light shining out from the North Polar opening of Venus. And Mercury, curiously, is rolling around the sun on its side with its polar opening pointing towards the Earth. And scientists, astronomers have seen this bright white spot in the middle of Mercury. I'm wondering what it is. And all it is the polar opening of Mercury and the inner sun shining out through it. And we can see it.
All right, let's talk a little bit about this expedition that is planned. Exactly when is it planned?
Steve Curry of the expedition company of Provo, Utah, contacted me about a year ago. He's of my same faith, and so he wanted to work with me and asked me if anybody had been planning an expedition to the Hollow Earth, and I said, yeah, there's been several people. Jan Lomprek of South Africa, when he was writing his book in 1998, was planning an expedition, but never got off the ground. There's also the International Society for Hollow Earth, people that were planning a reflight of the Admiral Byrd flight, and I haven't heard that they've been able to get that off the ground. But Steve Curry has been taking satisfied explorers all around the world for over 30 years, 250,000 people he says he's taken, mainly river rafting, and he wanted to know if we could put together an expedition to the Hollow Earth, and wanted to know where I thought the most likely location of the North Polar opening is. And so we went up to Provo and visited with him, and we put together this expedition. Steve has chartered a Russian nuclear icebreaker called the Yamal. It has
and he, by the way, is a very experienced expedition organizer. He's been doing this for 250,000 people over the last 30 years, right?
He's been taking people all around the world on expeditions to China, to Tibet, to South America, to Russia, all over the world. In fact, in his expedition down the Zompel Gorge in Tibet with Steve Lindgren, who is one of the most famous explorers in the world today, they found hidden falls in about the year 2000 over in Tibet. And he was talking with the Tibetans, and they told him that behind this hidden falls is a cavern that goes to Agartha, which is their word for Hollow Earth. And according to their legend, many years ago, the king of the inner world came out through this cavern and told their ancestors that someday their people would emerge to outer Earth to help establish world peace. This reminded Steve about his father had told him when he was a boy of 15 years old, when his father organized the expedition company. His father had just read apparently Raymond Bernard's book, The Hollow Earth Again, and told his family that he would like to go to the North Pole to find the polar opening. Well, they thought he was a little bit off his rocker. Didn't put much credence in what he was saying, but he did put together this highly successful expedition company. But once the Tibetans told Steve about Agartha and this cavern, it got him to thinking again about the hollow earth and what his father had told him many years before. And so he decided to put together this expedition, and I've been helping him. And we're inviting anybody that's interested, as scientists, explorers, tourists. This ship, the Russian nuclear icebreaker, is one of the most powerful ships in the world, 70,000 horsepower. It cuts through the Arctic ice like butter.
And you really have a pretty good idea where you're going, right? So this isn't going to be trial and error, right?
I have triangulated the sightings of these mirages around the Arctic and estimated where the North Polar opening is located based on these sightings of mirages. Jan Lomprich of South Africa, in his book his book Hollow Planets, he published in 1998. I helped him a little bit on proofing his book and giving him some suggestions. But he did an excellent analysis of these mirages sighted around the Arctic. For example, Admiral Peary, on his way to the pole in 1909, sighted land, a mirage of land, northwest of his trek to the pole from Ellesmere Island, northern Canada. Now, there's a whaler named Captain Keenan that sighted this same mirage of land northwest of Harrison Bay, Alaska. And the Russians have sighted it north of the New Siberian Islands. So, and then Olaf Janssen, he sailed northeast of Franz Josef Land. So what I have done, I've triangulated the directions in which this mirage of land have been sighted, and estimate that the North Polar opening is located at 84.4 north latitude, 141 east longitude. And we are taking these gyroscopes that will help us to detect the dip into the Earth as we start to go into the polar opening, so that we can find the 90-mile wide neck.
Sounds like a pretty interesting expedition. And I got to tell you, Rodney, I'm not sure about the hollow earth theory yet, but I do believe that you're convinced that it's there, and you speak with a conviction that, I think you believe you're telling the truth, and I think that's important.
Well, I'm a very religious person. I've discovered a lot of historical and scientific evidence for a hollow earth, but my main conviction is based on my religious beliefs. My analysis of the scriptures indicate that our earth is hollow because that's what the scriptures describe when describing the spirit world of this earth. The location of hell is here among us, and down in the shell of the planet is where the Satan and his angels are, here to tempt us.
Hold on. Let me ask you some questions about that. I thought the people who were in the hollow earth, the people, were pretty enlightened people, good people. Is that true or false?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Olaf Janssen described the people of inner earth as North European-type peoples that have blonde hair or red hair or brown hair, blue eyes, very tall, very educated, highly advanced in the sciences, and in music, very, very musical people.
All right, so
and also very friendly.
Where does Satan then and those evil spirits come from in terms of being in the hollow earth? What did you mean by that?
Okay. The spirit world, this earth has a spirit body, just like our bodies have a spirit inside of us that give us light, give us life. This earth is a living being. It has a spirit. The spirit world is the spirit body of the earth. The scriptures describe the spirit world as a hollow earth. And the location of hell has to, the scriptures describe the spirit world as having two separate locations. One is the location of the evil spirits, and the other is the location of the righteous spirits. The righteous are in what they call paradise, and the evil spirits are in what is called hell. And the scriptures also describe them as being separated by a great gulf. In the book of Luke, Abraham is up in heaven with the poor man, and the rich man's down in hell, and he says to Abraham, "Send me down Lazarus because I'm burning up in hell down here." And Abraham says, "I can't, because between you and us there is placed a great gulf that makes it impossible for us to go there and you to come here."
Well,
Right.
I've always believed that the planet is alive. I think it heals itself. It fights back to heal itself. I've never thought of it, though, as having a spirit like we have it, though.
Its spirit, our spirit, the spirit of our bodies looks just like us, but it's made out of an etheric substance that is very thin, okay, but is also eternal. It will never die.
2 years ago, Art interviewed a fellow by the name of Dallas Thompson, who was a hollow earth researcher. He was planning on journeying to the center of the earth in a mini helicopter, believing that he would be able to travel by a hole in the South Pole through the hollow earth and out through the hole in the North Pole. He claims that the holes into the hollow earth really exist and that monks regularly travel through the holes in order to visit a Tibetan village called Shambhala. Are there other people, Rodney, though, that are trying expeditions or want to do what you are doing?
Yes, we have had several of the people that have joined our expedition that have said that they had been planning an expedition of their own and just decided to come with us because ours seems to be the most well-planned and safest way to go. Like I said before, Jan Lamprecht of South Africa had been planning an expedition to go up and look for those mirages of land seen in the Arctic, but never was able to get enough contributions for his expedition.
If there was a submarine that was deep in the ocean and kind of went into the curvature of the hollow earth as well, would they know they were in there? I mean, at what point would they realize there's something wrong here?
They could detect if they're going in the polar opening if they're using a gyroscope. A gyroscope is an instrument that has a spinning wheel that, like, what we're going to do is at the North Pole set it at horizontal, and then as we go south on the 141st meridian, as we go into the polar opening, that gyroscope will maintain its original orientation in space, and so it'll start looking like it's dipping up. And we can also use that to help us find the polar opening, because if we go in, down, in, and then come back up, because we're not going straight down into the neck, the gyroscope will detect when we get down to the bottom of the dip and start coming back up. So then we just turn around, go back down to the bottom of the dip, and make a right angle turn, and then it will take us straight in.
Assuming you're correct, Rodney, at what point would you start to see, as you go into the curvature and down, at what point would you see the inner sun?
About probably less than a quarter of the distance in, you would see the inner sun.
And how far would that be, roughly?
Well, I estimate it to be about 500 and some odd miles from the North Pole.
So not a lot of miles here. So you would get there, and this cutter, this Russian cutter, goes how fast? How many knots?
It goes about 12 knots through ice and about 19 knots through open ocean.
19 open ocean. So it could take you another 30, 40 hours, I think, once you're in the curvature to be able to see the sun.
Yeah, our itinerary is that we will start from Murmansk, Russia, where's the port of these nuclear icebreakers, and it's about 1,000 miles of open ocean before you start to get to the ice, just north of the Franz Josef Land. and then another 400 miles to the pole, and then we would have another 500 miles of ice as we're going in the polar opening before we get to open ocean within the polar opening, and then we estimate another 500 miles to the inner continent.
We constantly hear about scientists down at the South Pole working on something. I don't know what it is. Is it possible it's this? They're working at the opening of the hole?
Oh, yes. This is world top secret. Our government knows all about this. There's certain elements in the military that are charged with exploration and study of the hollow earth, but it is considered a world top secret. They don't let any of it out. But I do have an interesting email on my website, if you'd like to read it, from a member of my church that says he knows several military men that have seen the South Pole opening.
All right, how do I find that email? And I can read it on the air.
On my new items link. I went to a UFO conference in 1991 here in Phoenix, and there was a fellow there that had a table that was selling a book that he said someone he knew, I don't think it was him, was taken in a flying saucer to the Bermuda Triangle, and that there was a underground city down there.
Right.
And so there probably is some quite a bit of energy emanating out of that location just because of the city that is on the bottom of the ocean.
Right. And the other question would be, as far as this being top secret, you had stated that there are a few officers or a few leaks of this. I wonder also if the leaks that have been, I guess, thrown out to the public, would that have anything to do with that movie that came out years ago, Journey to the Center of the Earth? Will it be because of leaks?
No, the Journey to the Center of the Earth was based on Jules Verne's book, The Journey to the Center of the Earth, which he wrote in the late 1900s, and it's just a fiction book. But I believe
1800s.
Yeah, late 1800s, actually in 1864. But I think his book was based on probably eyewitnesses, because he was very correct in everything that he said in his book.
Okay.
All right, thanks for your phone call. Appreciate it. Let's go to our wild card line. Welcome to Coast to Coast. You're on the air with us. Hi there.
Well, Merry Christmas.
You too.
Let me throw out an alternative hypothesis that may explain some of the phenomena. I think your guest is onto something, but I'd like to run an idea by him. And
You got it.
Let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm a 47-year member of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, vice president of the Baton Rouge Astronomical Society, and I was arts guest for 3 solid hours a year ago on November 8th, 2003, in regard to my book, The Universe and Multiple Reality. We know that strange things happen when you have rotating electric and magnetic fields. Witness Art's historic interview of Al Bielek on the Philadelphia Project. Witness what happens to people who are sucked up into tornadoes and happen to live, but find themselves ejected a week later with no accounting for the lost time. We have a rotating electric and magnetic field at the North Pole, and I would question whether this is simply a gate to an alternative parallel universe, a parallel edition of the planet Earth, and there would be millions of them one could flip into, and that it doesn't necessarily involve a hole in a pretty solid piece of rock. It involves simply a transition into a parallel universe.
Like a portal, perhaps.
A portal, absolutely. Absolutely. We're talking parallel universes and multiple reality, as in my book, The Universe and Multiple Reality. And I, too, have a website, if I may mention it.
Sure, because I got to believe you're Professor Franks by then. Right.
manyuniverses.com. But I just want to throw that out and see what your guest has to say about it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Professor. Appreciate you being on the show. What do you think of his theory, Rodney?
Well, first of all, people have been through the North Polar opening. Admiral Byrd, Olaf Janssen. There was a person named Reinhold Schmidt in California, Los Angeles in 1958. He had what he thought was a daydream to tell him to go out to this quarry outside the city, and while waiting there, flying saucer swooped down from the sky. Humans stepped out of it and invited him to go on a ride. They even took his car inside the flying saucer. They took off and went up above Alaska, and he says that they went through a hole in the Arctic Ocean, and they went in. They were just suddenly in another place where there was another sun and landscapes and cities. He was taken on a tour of the Hollow Earth, and then when he was brought back through the polar opening, he says that he saw the horizon dip and right itself as he went through it. And the reality of the polar opening, I think, has been documented. We, on our expedition, hope to prove it with film. We have Scott Lindgren, who is a film producer, plans on taking IMAX theater film on our expedition. But in regards to what this fellow says about a parallel universe, I would explain it as being the spirit world of this earth. Just like our bodies have a spirit inside of it that looks just like us, the spirit world of this earth looks just like it, and it's hollow. It has an inner sun, which is the location of paradise or the heaven of this earth. It has the shell of the earth as being the location of hell, where the evil spirits inhabit. So the body of the earth looks just like the its spirit body.
Will your expedition go take on unless you don't get enough people, or is it a go regardless?
We're hoping to have enough people to make this expedition a go by the year 2006. We're leaving in the summer of 2006, and Steve is offering a payment program where you can pay about $5,000 every 6 months or so to pay for your ticket. But we need to realize that this expedition is not sponsored by any organization, government, or other. It's a we the people expedition. Our government has, we have paid our servants in the government, and they have sent explorers to the Hollow Earth and have kept this secret from us.
You would think they would do something to stop this expedition, Rodney, don't you?
We feel like that we, the people, have a right to know. We are the sovereigns. The servants in our government have not told us the truth about our Earth. We feel like that we have a right to know. And we're inviting anybody that would like to go with us to determine if the Hollow Earth theory has any validity. We expect to find the evidence that the Hollow Earth does exist, that the polar openings do exist.
What if you don't find the evidence? Will you then change your mind? Would you say your theory is not correct, or would you continue onward?
We feel confident that we will find the polar opening using our gyroscopes. We'll be able to detect the opening into the Hollow Earth, and but as in an expedition, we have to offer an alternative in case we don't find the polar opening, that we will just continue from the North Pole to the New Siberian Islands, where there have been a lot of mammoths and exotic animal remains that Hollow Earth theorists claim have floated out from the inner Earth, where they have frozen in the ice and dumped on the Siberian coasts. But we felt confident that we will find the North Polar opening.
If you find the opening, Rodney, how far down are you going to go? You're going to keep going until you come out through the south?
Yeah, our itinerary is to go into until we find the inner continent, which is about halfway through the polar opening, and then try to find the river that Olaf Janssen sailed up, called the Hiddekel. We will go up this river to the port city where he was taken in, called Jehu, and there we'll try to take an inner Earth monorail train to their capital city at the Garden of Eden to visit the palace of the king of the inner world.
Let's hope they're friendly.
All the people that have record of that went to the Hollow Earth all report that they were very friendly people. Admiral Byrd said they were very friendly people. Olaf Janssen said they were very friendly people. Reinhold Schmidt was treated very kindly by the people that took him in the flying saucer, and that they would not accept us with open arms.
Very possible that from the moment you're in the opening, you may get an escort, don't you think?
We would hope that they would, yes.
This email, by the way, that you had told me about is from a first name Jack, who said he spent 20 years with Special Forces in the Navy, and he said that he knows of several high-level officers who have told him of secret studies, this is his email, of scientists going down in the hole working with tribes there. And when we come back, why don't you explain a little bit more for me, Rodney, on what these tribes mean? Is he talking about those lost tribes of Israel or the people who are down there now? I'd like to know why he calls them tribes. So we'll be back with you in just a moment right here on Coast to Coast AM. Why do you really believe that government is not telling us if there is a hollow earth? I mean, what's the big deal to us as human beings? I mean, I don't think anybody would get upset if they said, look, the planet's hollow and they're people. Well, I guess if they say they're 15-foot people, maybe that would be a little staggering. Do you think we're afraid? Is that why they're not telling us?
Yes, they're very much afraid. In my research, I have concluded that the lost 10 tribes of Israel are in the Hollow Earth, that their king sits on the inherited throne of David, which the Lord promised to David in the Bible, that there would always be a son that would sit on his throne over the house of Israel. My conclusion is that this government of the Hollow Earth is the political kingdom of God, and that the prophecies are that they will expand the outer earth and help establish world peace.
Well, I hope somebody does.
Those people that are controlling our government are the super rich internationalists, the bankers that make tons of money off in all these wars that they have been sending our children around the world fighting just to make them rich. And our government has been borrowing trillions of dollars from their private bank called the Federal Reserve, and we're very close to bankruptcy. It's $7 trillion and going straight up. The government accounting offices estimate that our government will go bankrupt by the year 2009. At that point, ever since the Rothschilds set up the central banks in Europe in the 1700s, he had a plan of how to collect on governments that wouldn't pay up or went bankrupt, and that was to use the interest money to build up an enemy. George Washington had a vision during the years at Valley during the winter at Valley Forge.
He had three.
In which an angel appeared to him and showed him the future of the United States, that we would pass through three great trials in this country. And the first one was the Revolutionary War. The second was the war between the states. And then he says at the end of the age, the whole world would attack us, and we would be fighting them on the streets, defending our country. Well, I think this is all going to happen because our country is going to go bankrupt, and the international bankers are going to try to repossess us. This war will nearly destroy our country.
What does this have to do with the Hollow Earth, though?
Well, once our country, our government is destroyed, and the governments of this world are pretty much destroyed by this coming war, the kingdom of God will expand from inner earth to outer earth.
Well, we'll find out as soon as you get in there. If you're going in 2006, when do you expect to come back?
Well, our itinerary is for 20 days. That we estimate 8 days to the pole and about 4 days to the inner earth, and then we'll spend about 4 days in there, and then the rest of the days coming back out.
Can we be in phone communication with you, Rodney, while you're on this trip?
Yes, Steve has a satellite phone, and we can give you updates until we're have gone inside the opening and cannot reach the satellite.
That would be perfect. As if you're going in, and if we lose you, that means you've obviously gone right into the hole.
Yeah, we would give you indications that we have found it, and we would go on. Yes, the magnetic field of the Earth is evidence that the Earth is hollow and has a solid core, and that even the sun has been noticed to have a very strong magnetic field. And scientists, I found an article in Scientific American in which they did a study proving that gaseous planets or stars, they have this dilemma because a gaseous star could not produce a magnetic field. The magma-filled Earth concept of science would be unable to create the magnetic field of our Earth. The reason how our Earth has a magnetic field is because the inner sun is a crystal ball that rotates at a different speed from the shell and has a electric charge, as well as the shell of the Earth has electric charge. And these two charges rotating about each other creates this magnetic field. And I did a recalculation of all the gaseous planets, including the sun, that if they are hollow and have a shell that's 10% of the diameter of the planet, they would all be solid. My calculation for the density of the sun is that it is 2.6, which indicates that it is a crystal ball. Now, the spirit world of this earth is divided into two places. Christ told the thief on the cross, "Today thou shalt be with me in paradise." He told the Pharisees that where paradise was. He says, even as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale, even so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. In Ephesians chapter 4, it says, before Christ ascended into heaven after his resurrection, he first descended into the lower parts of the earth. So this earth has two parts. One for the righteous spirits of men who have died and lived a righteous life. They are taken to paradise. That location in my study is the inner sun. Olaf Jansen was told by the inner earth people that the inner sun is the throne of Jehovah, their God. I did a study of the book of Genesis, in which it talks about the light that lights up on the first day of creation, and God calls it the firmament or the heaven. The heaven is singular. It says, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. That heaven, is the inner sun.
Rodney, I read an email before the break that talked about scientists claiming that they were aware of this, according to the email, but they mentioned that they had met the tribes. Now, what were they talking about? The same thing that you've been talking about?
Yes. This fellow that wrote the email is a Latter-day Saint, and we believe that in our Latter-day Saint scriptures that has been revealed to us that the lost tribes are in the north countries, and they will come down from the north countries in the latter days before the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ, the second coming. This is, according to my belief also, that these people of the inner earth are mainly the lost tribes of Israel that migrated up there 2,500 years ago.
What do you think the population is down there now? I mean, this is all speculation, I'm sure, but is it in the millions?
Well, I'm sure it's in the millions, but Olaf Jansen says that they don't get married until they're in their 60s, and they live to about 800 years old, so they probably don't have as many children as we do. I would say that they are less populous than we are, but more powerful.
Do you think they're curious to see what's going on the surface?
Oh, yes. They send their flying saucers out all the time to Earth, mainly piloted by their androids so they don't get shot out of the air.
So how many years do you think they are ahead of us technologically? 100? 50?
Oh, no. I think they're at least 2,000 years in advance of us. Galileo started the scientific revolution only 300 years ago.
Right. So they're way ahead of us then.
Oh,
How did they get this technology?
They've been progressing since they went up there 2,500 years ago, so without any wars or disease, they were able to progress a lot faster continuously. It's just like us. If we went from the time of Galileo to 2,500 years into the future from Galileo, we would be at their level of technological advancement.
What do you think their cities look like? I mean, tall skyscrapers and things like that?
They build their cities. They're not very as large as some of our largest cities, but they have unique architecture. Mirages of an inner Earth city seen in Alaska describe them as more Oriental type architecture. Olaf Jansen described them building big palaces of music that they love to sing, and they have lots of gold and silver and valuable stones that they decorate their palaces with, and they are quite interesting people.
And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie, along with Rodney Clough, and your phone calls as we wrap things up this final half hour. Rodney, think about this theory, that we don't have a hollow Earth, but maybe we have some indentations on the north and south poles that curve in to the point where it's warmer and vegetation grows, trees grow, there are animals, and maybe even indeed these civilizations. Is that a possibility?
That was a theory of Lieutenant Green, the physicist that went with Admiral Peary to the pole in 1909. He spoke with the Greenland Eskimos and asked them what happened to the Viking colonists that had colonized Greenland for over 1,000 years, and where they had disappeared to. And apparently, when Greenland was recolonized in 1721 by the Europeans, they didn't think to ask the Eskimos what happened to the lost Vikings. But the Eskimos told Lieutenant Green that every year they would go farther and farther north because of better hunting towards the north. And then one winter, the hunting party came back and told the rest that they had found a paradise up in the Arctic. And so they just all packed up their bags, the Eskimos said, and just traipsed off across the ice and never came back. So Lieutenant Green believed that out there in this area where I estimate the polar opening is, there was a continent, an island, that was heated by geysers and volcanoes and kept warm in that manner. And they were going to go up there and explore And it wasn't too long after that Admiral Byrd flew up there and found out that it was the polar opening and flew inside the hollow Earth. Actually, there's been a couple of movies based on this. There's a movie put out by Disney called Island at the Top of the World. It's based on Lieutenant Green's idea of there's an island out there. Magnetic field is caused by, like a dynamo, it has two solid parts, one rotating about the other, with both of them having electrical currents. So
Okay.
the current in the shell of the Earth and the electricity of the inner sun, both of them being solid, one rotating at a different speed about the other is what causes the magnetic field. Now, so scientists can't understand why the Earth's magnetic field is inclined to the Earth's axis. This can only be explained by the hollow Earth theory, which was proposed by Edmund Halley back in the 1600s, in which he proposed that the Earth's magnetic field is created because the Earth is hollow and has a core that rotates at a different rate than the shell. Well, the South Pole is on a continent, and it's easier for the nations of the Earth to set up their bases and to explore it, probably easier than up in the Arctic. And as far as what they find down there, they're not telling us what they're finding. We just hear rumors.
And what are you hearing? Rodney, you there?
Yes.
What are you hearing in terms of what they're finding down there?
Just like the guy that emailed me and says he knows a bunch of military men that have seen the polar opening. I mean, our government's not telling us about this. We just hear it by the grapevine. And the inner sun is not maintained there by magnetism. It's maintained there by gravity and a combination of gravity and also ionic force of the ion emission. The radiation that the inner sun puts out helps it maintain its central location. Astronauts that went to the moon, interestingly enough, when they set foot on the moon and they dropped the hammer and the feather, I measured it and how fast it fell. And the moon has a third more gravity, about one-third of the gravity of the Earth, not sixth. Based on that, how fast that hammer fell to the moon's surface. The scientists saying that the moon has 1/6 gravity, it's not true. For an illustration is the movie Superman. When these astronauts were up on the moon and they were jumping around, that's 1/6 gravity. If you remember that movie, they were jumping around on 1/6 gravity. Our astronauts that went to the moon, they were not jumping around like that. There is not 1/6 gravity on the moon. The moon is actually hollow also, and the astronauts left seismographs on the moon and dropped a third stage of the rocket onto it and measured the moonquakes going down into the moon's surface, and it came back revealing that the moon is hollow and has a shell about 60 miles thick. It's a very dense planet.
Give me odds, Rodney, on your expedition on what you think its percent of success might be.
We are going on this expedition on faith that we will find the polar opening and enter in. We're going in the spirit of Christopher Columbus. People laughed at him, made fun of him, called him a hollowhead, and he believed that he was inspired by God to discover America. We are going in the spirit of Columbus. We have a Russian nuclear icebreaker that has the ability to make it to the hollow Earth. We have the ability to find that polar opening, and we hope that we can enter in and prove that our Earth is hollow And this knowledge that we will obtain will not be kept secret, because this expedition is an expedition of we the people. Only those of us who have money to buy a ticket on this voyage will go. And so the knowledge that we obtain will belong to us, to we the people.
Earlier I asked you if you thought governments would stop you from this expedition. You didn't answer me. I want to ask you that again.
Well, they haven't so far. When Steve went to South America and did a conference down there, he was approached by an agent of the Illuminati who offered to finance our expedition. We felt like that we better not use their money, because they from past experience they seem to try to control everybody with their money.
And they may have wanted to suppress whatever you might have found.
Yeah. So this expedition is going to be financed by we the people, and we will invoke the protection of the Lord and hope that we can have His protecting care and make a successful journey.
And we'll expect your satellite phone calls for daily updates, all right? Let's go west of the Rockies. Welcome to Coast to Coast. Hi there.
Hi, good evening. Great show. Just wanted to ask your guests and maybe some listeners about some stories that the Japanese, during their movement into the Aleutian Island chain during the Second World War, lost several battalions to giants that were coming up through caverns and islands in the Aleutian chain. And further to that, since then, geologists and guys looking for iron, minerals and oil and stuff like that have been chased off the islands, and they now have a cordon where they can't take cruise liners within about 60 miles of these islands. I was just wondering if he's heard anything about that, and do they have any nighttime in the center Earth? Those would be my two questions.
Okay.
No, I haven't heard about these giants in these caverns, but yeah, my evidence indicates that there are cavern cities within the Earth where people live and have lived for centuries. We don't know too much about them. We just hear we hear rumors about people living in caverns within the Earth. Now, as regarding the inner sun, Olaf Janssen described the inner sun as being divided between its day and night sides. When they first noticed it, as they were going through the North Pole opening, it looked like a smoky color. So that's why he called it the Smoky God in his book. But every 12 hours, a bright white side of it would come into view, and it was like day. So there was a day side to it and a night side. And on the night side of it, he says there's a large opaque area that has bright, shiny holes that look like stars at night. So no, the sun inside is always visible, but it has a day and night side. And since it turns so very slowly, once every 700 years, the rotation of the shell about it makes the effect of day and night.
Well, Rodney, good luck on your expedition. I'm sure we'll be hearing